Hello and welcome to the 64th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when they're losing. Notice the there, not even when you're losing.
When other people are losing?
Exactly. This episode is going to be about board gaming, and is it fun no matter...
Period.
No,
Yeah.
Is board gaming fun? Yes. Is board gaming fun no matter what? There are many people who hold the opinion that, well, I'm hanging out and I'm playing a game, therefore it's fun.
I'm already having fun. Right.
It's already a 6 out of 10 experience. Do we agree or do we disagree with that statement? But as always, well, we didn't even introduce ourselves, which is horrifying. I'm Callan, your host, the red tank, the aforementioned aggressive host of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I'm joined by Neelan, the orange tank, a humble man. Mark,
Most humble.
the magnificent green tank,
That's right.
the Omni Gamer.
The Omni Gamer.
I kind of think of like a dinosaur, you know, like I'm like a T-Rex and you're like the herbivore.
I'm the one who survives till the end.
Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
a boring dinosaur.
Yeah.
Survival is what's most important to me.
Fair enough. As always, we will start by talking about the games that we have played this past week. Neelan, why don't you start us off with alliteration?
Using the power of alliteration, Kellen and I played Tiny Towns. This is a very small game that is perhaps in a box bigger than it should be, given the name. But
Perhaps?
Well, yeah, I guess it could be. I was imagining just imagine like a nice little tiny box to go in with Tiny Towns. Anyway, so the way Tiny Towns works is I kept saying it was like in the vein of a roll and write, which feels a little bit right to me. The way this works is you have a grid of 16 spaces on your little tiny town, unplanned as yet. There are 5 types of cubes. In turn order, you pick one of those cubes and you call it out to the table. Everyone then takes one of those cubes and places it on an empty space on their board. And you keep doing this until someone is able to make a building, which corresponds to these 7 cards that are on the board. The 7 cards are dealt out at the beginning. They're permanent. They never get removed. They never get replaced. You can build any number of them. And each one of them has like a little pattern of colored cubes, or like say, 3 in an L shape of like a red, blue, and yellow. It makes a cottage. So if you've assembled a pattern after placing a bunch of resources, you just take all those resources off. You take a cottage building, you place it on one of those spots, and you continue. You can never place a resource where there's already a resource or another building, so your playing area starts to get very constricted very, very quickly. And then each building scores you a different number of points at the end of the game. And that's basically the entire game. Like you keep doing this until when you finish your board in a way that you can no longer place, you're done. Everyone keeps going until everyone else is done. And then you tally up your score. And that's pretty much it. So it reminds me a lot of a roll and write in that although you're not sort of relying on cards or dice, you're not always in control of the cubes that get called, obviously, because people are picking them in turn order. Right. And you just sort of have to make do with what you get given. And there's that feeling I love about roll and writes where you can sort of get risky with your placement, right? It's like, someone's definitely going to call the yellow cube, so I can put this here, and when it comes up, it's going to be great. And then as time passes, you don't get that yellow cube, and you're like, okay, now I have less space to do than I actually want to do. Eventually, your whole board fills up, and it gets nasty, like potentially, if you're not like properly planning out where you're going to place these things.
You're a modest man, Neelan. I think you're underselling it a little bit because the key conceit or the key hook, in my opinion, is the fact that you are the ones calling out what resource everyone will be getting.
Right.
So in a roll and write, that's usually determined by a random deck or a roll.
Right.
In this game, you're kind of paying attention to what other players need or want and wanting to get on that hype train. So, if someone needs stone and you also need stone, you want them to call it so you can call your thing. And so it's that moment on your turn where you're just desperately hoping that you're going to be able to complete that building as long as the person calls what you expect them to call.
Right.
And then it doesn't happen, and then you scream at them, and everybody screams, and there's weeping and wailing.
Which is the thing I was going to say. Like, on the baseline, it has, like, the semblance of a roll and write, but what I think is the ultimate power of it is that you could be playing the table as much as you want to. Like, there's a version of this where you're just looking at your board, calling each cube as it comes out, and just making do. But, you might look over at Kellen, he's got a lot of stone on his board, he probably doesn't want more stone, so you call stone because it's going to hurt Kellen. And there's a lot of that you can potentially do where every call you make is this balance of helping you and hurting other players if you want to play it that way.
So the way you guys played it, was there a lot of that going on? Was there a lot of like
Depending on who you asked, yeah. I think like Christina was saying that she was looking at a lot of people's other boards and like trying to figure out what she thought they would call.
Right.
I wasn't doing a whole lot of that in that game of it,
And you guys were playing like a fairly large game, right? It wasn't like a 5
It was a
player
5-player, yeah, and it goes to 6 actually.
So how long did it run?
Half an hour.
Even with at least one person being more methodical.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's quick.
Yeah, it's a very unique one because there was a moment where I had 3 spots left and there were 3 people until my turn. And all that had to happen was in one of those 3 calls, I needed one thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But each time I got the tension ratcheted up for me.
Yeah, right.
And I was hoping, like right at the end, and we were making jokes, and the joke was that the resources, you know, it's like stone, wood, weed, and we couldn't remember that, so they were like fruits, so it was like strawberries and bananas.
Okay.
So I just needed someone to call banana.
Yeah, right.
And as I got to the last one, it was like, oh my God, you know, Neelan can kill me if he doesn't call banana.
Did you have any sense of, like, by looking at their board, if they were going to call it? Did you, like, say, like, well, Neelan might call banana, Dan is definitely not going to call banana, and Christina will?
Well, that would be the strategy that
Yeah, right.
that one would need.
Okay.
But it's just so funny because then they call it and then you die and then you scream. And so there's that moment where you're just waiting.
Right.
So there's a lot in there, and you can see there's a lot of positive buzz for Tiny Town right now. It's the first game with the word tiny in it that's good.
Oh, wow. Shots fired. But for a game that teaches as quickly as it does, like it's 5 minutes of rules. Like it literally just explained the whole thing. It's half an hour to play. And it's actually, the decisions they feel weighty because like it's not a big board. So it's very easy to build yourself into a corner.
Okay.
We had people sort of finishing out and then still going another few rounds before other people did. So there's definitely potentially a lot of variability in how you build your board and how efficiently you do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a spatial puzzle. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're into that, you'll be into that. And this has just a bit more interactivity, which I think is great.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's Tiny Towns. We liked it a lot.
Sounds good.
Is there an S on it? Tiny Towns.
Oh,
Or is it a
I
tiny
think it
town?
might be Tiny Town.
Uh-oh.
Is it in this room?
Putting you on the spot.
I think it's Tiny Town.
Who can say?
Search for both. Yeah, who can say?
Yeah.
All right, the next game that we all played together was Zendo. Now, Zendo is an older classic game that utilizes the Looney pyramids, and there's been a recent release as of last year, and that recent release updated and changed the game a little bit. Zendo is quite good. Zendo is an induction logic puzzle in a game where one player is creating a rule that the other players are using building blocks or these acrylic pieces and trying to figure out what that rule is. So there are 3 colors of shapes, and then there are 3 types of shapes. So there are pyramids, there are wedges, and there are blocks. And so a rule might be a yellow pyramid must be on a blue wedge. And so how a game starts is there's a deck of cards that help you figure out these rules. You don't have to make them up, thank God. And you must build 2 structures. So you build those 2 structures in front of you, and you put a white disc in front of the structure that is correct. You put a black disc in front of the structure that is incorrect, and then the game starts. Everyone has to evaluate those structures and build a structure on their turn in front of them, and then decide if they want to guess whether their structure is right or wrong, or whether they want to know whether their structure is right or wrong. In order to win the game, you have to guess what the exact card is, exact clue, or the exact rule is. In order to do that, you have to do a quiz. So you have to build a structure and say quiz. Then everyone at the table will put their hand out. They'll guess whether that's right or wrong. If you're right, you get a guessing cube. And a guessing cube is the only way you can turn that in to make an official guess on your turn. This is a moderated game. So I played as the moderator when we played again last night.
Right.
We played a game, I think, with 6 other people.
Yeah.
Right? And the rules are always deceptively simple. This one is going to be hard to describe to you guys because what you're thinking about and what you're doing is so different than a normal board game, quote unquote. This is more of an activity. So for all of you out there who don't believe that the mind is a party game, you may want to turn off this segment.
Skip the segment.
Yeah, or maybe you could just filter by my voice.
Right. Oh, can we
that's
do that?
I mean, I think you
Does
have
If that's
Technology
possible,
exists.
then
We should do that every episode.
Yeah.
that'll tighten up about a third of the podcast.
Yeah.
Or maybe more.
You tend to talk a lot.
So what do you guys think of Zendo?
I liked it a lot. We've played it now at 6 players plus moderator. Before we played it at 3 players plus moderator. I think I like it a little better at 3. This is getting a little technical. because I felt like at 6, it sort of gamified it more than I wanted to. You were more considerate about turn order, and there was a lot more consideration. Whereas it does feel like an activity, so you sort of just want to get. I felt like I just really wanted to get into the deduction part of things, and considering whether or not I should try to get a cube made things a little less fun. But it is a fun game. I love the like logic puzzles. I love these like deduction sort of games. And this is just a stripped down deduction game. Even yesterday with 7 players, I think the game's averaged 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. You even have the tactile thing about building these structures, which is nice. It's like unlike a deduction game like Sleuth and most deduction games, you're not dealing with a piece of paper and pencil, like, cross hatching
super
thing.
dry. Yeah.
You're building structures and you're having them like, in different orientations. So that's fun. It's fun to like build structures and deduce based on that. So yeah, I really liked it.
And then especially like as the game's progressing, you're seeing all these structures.
Right.
It's just a nice visual of just like everyone's past record and like whether it was right or wrong and that sort of thing.
You think you know what the rule is, and then you scan all the buildings to see if anything violates the rule.
The other thing I like about it is, again, like not like most deduction games, is everyone has the same shared information. You never have more information than any other player at the table. It's all just about how quickly can you look at what's out there and come to
a good point.
conclusion.
Yeah, there's no hidden information.
Right, exactly. I agree. Like with more players, the mechanic of getting the guessing cubes and you having to use on your turn,
the timing,
it's like it's hard because if you don't, then you're waiting 5 other players before it gets back to you. I agree. I liked it in a smaller group, but regardless, it's just a good shared experience. It felt like something that is, whether or not you're winning, whether or not you're losing, it's fun to participate in.
Right.
Just to like sort of, because sometimes you're looking at the table and it's like, this isn't possible. There's nothing here. Yeah. And then you hear the rule and it's so obvious what it was. Right. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah, we had one last night where the structure needed to contain 0 blue pyramids.
Right.
And that 0 was, everyone was looking for, well, what do all the ones that follow the rule have? And it wasn't that. It was actually the opposite of that. And so it took substantially longer for you guys to get there.
Right.
I think that this game is very flexible in a way too, because if you want to gamify it, like in the way that you're talking about, like Mark was concerned because in that big of a player count game, you almost don't want to reveal information.
Yeah, right.
It's not just about the quest for truth. It's about trying to learn something without letting everyone else also learn that.
Right.
And so Mark had thought he had solved the puzzle, as soon as his turn ended, which was bad because then you couldn't guess for it for 5 more turns.
Right.
And so that's one really gamey, way to play it. But I've played games with the difficult cards where it's a half an hour in and no one can figure it out, and the whole game becomes a co-op, and everyone is like discussing their theories and sort of trying. And so, that flexibility means, well, if you want it to be this try-hard competitive environment, you could do that. And that is Zendo. It has these beautiful translucent pieces. It's really cool to see it out on the table. I played this with my friend in New York, Kurt. Immediately ordered it while we were playing, and will likely keep it around forever because it's that unique, different experience. You cannot get this
feels
anywhere
classic
else.
Too. Yeah, feels timeless. Feels like a game that won't be a passing fad. You'll always be able to play it.
Yep, that is Zendo from the Looney Labs. All right, Mark. Everyone's been talking about it.
Yep,
we've been playing it. Why don't you talk to us about Mr. Lacerda's latest game?
Escape Plan.
Dun, 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 dun.
So, yes, Escape Plan is the latest game by Vital Lacerda, maker of many heavy games like Gallerist and Kanban and what else? Gallerist, Kanban, Lisboa, Vinos. Yes, so this is right in the same sort of vein, another very, very heavy game. So in Escape Plan, you play as crooks who I guess have done a heist in the past, but now the heat is starting to get on, and you have 3 days to gather the loot that you've distributed across the city and escape. Extremely thematic. Kellen loved that part of it. And the way this works is you're playing on a modular board, a board that's made up of hexes, and the city expands round by round, which is also thematic.
Deeply thematic.
Yeah.
Everything in the game.
There's a deep fog in the city. Right. It's slowly dissipating.
You're going around the city. As it expands, you're visiting businesses where you can either get money, because money is extremely tight in this game. So there are 3 sets of businesses and or safe houses. One of each of the sets will give you money, giving you cash to use during the game. And then the other 2 you can visit for game end points, basically. As you're doing this, you're acquiring cards that allow you to take one-time powers. Based on the actions you do, your notoriety is rising and falling. The higher the notoriety you have, the more you can sort of unlock these pieces on your board, unlocking more actions that become available. Also, the higher you are in notoriety, the higher you are in turn order. So those are both good things. However, being high in notoriety also has negative consequences. When you cross thresholds as you're moving up the notoriety track, all your opponents who have a lower notoriety than you can move the cops towards you.
They must move
the cops towards you, and the cops in this game are difficult to evade. It's like basically the default state is if you are moving off of a tile with cops on them, you're going to get hurt, and you have basically 3 hit points. Your 4th damage has negative effects. So basically you have 3 life points. So there are ways to mitigate this, but it's generally hard to avoid the cops. And then the game progresses over 3 days, each day having 5 rounds, I believe.
Up to 5 rounds.
Up to 5 rounds, right. Minimum 3 rounds, at the most 5 rounds. So most games you're playing between 9 and 15 turns, period. And much closer to the 9, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I think at best you're playing like 2 or 3 extra actions.
Right.
So like 11 actions.
Right, during the entire game. And at the end, when the final day occurs, when it starts, then all the hexes have been placed on the board, and there are 3 potential exits that are sort of closing down gradually as the game progresses. And when the 3rd day is revealed, you find out which of the 3 exits is the one that you can escape, and you can only escape on that 3rd day. And there's further incentive to escape because the first person to escape does so for free, and then it becomes more costly for every subsequent escapee. And again, money is super tight, so there's a very real possibility that you won't have enough money to escape the game, and therefore you just lose. And that's basically the way Escape Plan works. There's a lot, obviously, to the game. Anybody who knows Lacerda games knows that there are obviously a lot of ways to score, a lot of ways you're visiting the city, you're picking up keys that unlock lockers that are game endpoints. But that's generally how the game works.
I mean, if those 7 systems that he described weren't enough, there's about 14 others that we didn't get to.
Right. Well, you really, in order to really get the theme, you really need to
know all of the systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Rushing out of the city is a story of interlocking systems.
Yeah,
many counts.
So what did you guys think of Escape Plan? Let's start with Neil.
Let's start with me.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
So Mark and I have played this. We played this at 3-player. We played this at 4-player.
Right.
The first 3-player game I had, I liked. There's a thing with all of the Lacerda games I've played where figuring out the puzzle of the game, especially on your first time round, is very interesting because you look at the board at the start, you're like, I don't really know what to do. I don't know how I'm going to get access to the things I need to do. But figuring that as you go is really, really cool.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the end of the game, you've got your handle on how the systems connect, and then what's beautiful about the last turn of this game is it just becomes this very tense puzzle of okay, I have this amount of money. If I don't get to the exit first, I might have to pay. So can I afford to hang around? Should I just go for it and get out early? And that calculation is just this really, really interesting puzzle that you're combining all of the systems based on your position, based on like the keys you have available, based on how far ahead in the game you think you are. There's a little bit of like gambling on your projected position in the game. Like if you think you're ahead, you get out. If you think you're willing to risk other people sort of loitering around and getting more cash, there's a lot to consider. That said, I came to the end of that first game not feeling necessarily excited about it. I liked it and I enjoyed the puzzle of it, but I wasn't excited to play it again. We decided to play it again at a bigger player count, and I liked that game a whole lot more.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So with 4 players, there were just a lot more chaos kind of. Early on in the game, a lot more people are moving up the notoriety track, so cops are sort of moving around the city, closing in on people. There's a lot more avoidance you had to do. It just became a lot more bustly, a lot harder, really.
Yeah, I agree.
And for some reason, that elevated the game a lot more. I found I could do, in my game, considerably less than I did the first time round, and it just created restrictions with the addition of the knowledge I had of like having played it once of just making the puzzle sort of shine a lot more.
Yeah, and I think the knowledge, because there are a lot of rules, there are a lot of mechanics to the game, just having played it once made the second game just in my mind, I wasn't spending so much bandwidth on remembering how the rules went. That it's a smoother action in general.
Because there is a lot of intricacy to it. And I will say that even on the second game, I didn't have it down. Like I would be staring at my reference sheet being, okay, what do I do at the clinic? Yeah. What do I do at the store? What do I do at this? And that's frustrating. I think at the end of your second game, you ideally feel like you should have a grip on all of that.
Right.
It's not great that you constantly have to be referencing that stuff, and that still feels like a pretty big knock against to me. That said, I came to the end of the second game feeling like, oh, maybe I could see myself actually playing more of this. Like it just came together in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I would feel pretty decent about it after that, to be quite honest. Callan,
how decent about it do you feel?
Well, I have a lot to say. And so I think I want to preface this. Mr. Lacerda is well known for creating the most complicated of heavy Euro games in existence, with systems and subsystems that all interact with each other. And I want to use a little story from my life to help illustrate this. So over the past couple weekends, I attended a Alvin Ailey contemporary dance concert. Okay, so I went downtown in LA and saw a modern contemporary dance group. Alvin Ailey is apparently, and I might even be saying that wrong, one of the best dance troupes in the world.
Right.
Okay, there with my girlfriend. Girlfriend is crying. She's so affected by how beautiful this. After like 3 minutes, I knew that it wasn't for me. Like I was attaining no enjoyment.
Right.
Literally none. But I realized, truthfully, and this isn't a joke. I want there to be a joke at the end of this, but there isn't. It wasn't for me, and I was there seeing it, and there was value in like looking around and acknowledging something that has nothing to do with me. Let's say, that is the closest analogous to Escape Plan by Mr. Lacerda. Everything about this game violates all the ethos and principles and things that I think that board games should be.
Put that on the box. Is there time to put that on the second printer?
Board Game Barrage.
Yes, right.
It is extremely wide in terms of its rule set. There are a ton of, the depth to rule set ratio for me is off the charts wrong. And truthfully, Escape Plan is supposed to be Lacerda's most simple game, or most game that everyone can get into as an entryway into Lacerda. And so that was what I was excited about to try the game. But it is just systems upon mechanical processes, where each turn is follow these 7 steps, and this building does these 4 things, and 4 out of 7 of the buildings also let you take this card at the end of your turn, but these ones don't. And only 2 people, per. It's extremely mechanical. It's extremely puzzly. And for me, the best board games exist between the rules. That is, that the rules are there, they get out of your way, and then your interactivity between you is the game. And that I would say Mr. Lacerda and I would not agree based on having played Escape Plan. And that's not to say there's no interactivity in Escape Plan, because there is.
Yeah.
But it's all carefully regulated in a very strict framework that does not feel like there is much room for ingenious maneuvers between the players. The maneuvers are every turn there's a math problem, and how can I solve that? And I have no interest in that.
That's fair.
And so, but think of Alvin Ailey, Kellen. Think of Alvin Ailey. There are people for whom this would be great. If you're looking for a Euro game with theme, I also don't think this achieves that. Great Western Trail is a marvelous board game. In hindsight, I wish I would have been more positive about Great Western Trail in comparison to this. But I did prepare sort of a list of questions for you guys just to get us through the theme here.
Yeah.
So 1, why are the criminals building a map of the city they're escaping?
Easy. Fog.
Fog of crime.
Yep.
Fog of crime.
Why do you have to pay money to escape the city on your final turn? And if you don't, you're caught by the police.
Bribes.
Why, when you get a 3rd wound, do you automatically heal a wound?
4th wound, first of all. Second of all, that's how science works. Medicine.
Yeah. They're
Medical.
self-healing. That only activates once they're close to death.
Yeah.
Did you not read that?
The body seizes up and protects itself.
Adrenaline.
Why can 1 less than the player count of criminals go to any building in the game?
Space. Doors only fit 2 people.
Fire hazard.
Why do you steal keys from vaults and use them to open lockers at convenience stores?
You steal keys from vaults?
You get keys from the safe houses.
Yeah, you get keys from safe houses, and you
And
go
then
to the
you
convenience store.
Yeah. No, that actually makes sense. You stashed the money in the lockers, and you're fetching the keys for those lockers from the safe houses.
What?
Couldn't be more obvious.
You steal a key
You
at a
steal
vault.
a key.
You take a key from
you
the
went
vault,
to your safe house,
and then go to any
got a key.
convenience store in the city.
No, it's a metaphor.
All right. Why does your income go down the more buildings you visit?
This one actually is explained in the rules, funnily enough. So,
it makes sense. Yeah.
There are businesses that you've invested in, and what you're doing is sort of like cashing out from them. That's why your income goes down when you collect the cash from them.
All right. And last but not least, why does resting allow you to reuse previously used bulletproof vests and gas masks?
As you're resting, you're like fixing the vest. Take your day off.
Easy. Thematic.
Yeah, super thematic.
That's my thoughts on Escape Plan, guys. I don't know.
It's funny because I really disagree with you. I think as a heavy Euro game worked, it was surprisingly thematic to me. No, like I felt like.
Did you feel? And this is where I disagree online with a lot of the sentiment was, oh, I felt like a criminal, or I felt like there was so much tension about escaping. I did not feel that.
There is like a cat and mouse feeling with the cops. You are trying to like avoid them because when they start really ganging up, and that was a much more prevalent in our second game. So maybe that was
feeling like cops were closing on you constantly was a big deal. And also like it does replicate the sort of like uneasy tension of criminals, right? Well, screw you, I'm going to get out first, and everyone else just there's like something there. Like you're waiting for the one person that's going to screw you over while you're all trying to accomplish the same thing. I don't know. I thought it worked as well as any game of that weight could.
No, I think that we were trying to help each other understand and remember all of these rules and processes and subsystems. And so our ongoing joke was how thematic every element was.
Yeah, sure.
I do think for a Euro game, obviously, it's cool and it's fun to have a different theme.
Yeah. But
sometimes that gets confused. This action raises notoriety and this action lowers notoriety.
Right. Yes.
Oh, that also leads to one of my other favorite questions. Why didn't I have it on my beautiful list? Why is visiting a hospital raise your notoriety the same as murdering cops?
I think the rules say something like, because you're getting a doctor to work on you and they report the crime or something like that. Like,
it's like the rules have an explanation of theme for each one. An apology.
No, trust me, this is thematic because,
so I don't want to belabor my opinion on Escape Plan. I actually do believe it's the least valuable to people who may be interested in it because it's just so far gone. I would like to play one more Lacerda game. I think Mark is going to play Kanban with me. I work in the automotive industry, so I feel like I have a little...
Another thematic wave. Can't wait.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. But that is Kanban by Vital Lacerda.
And Escape Plan by Vital Lacerda as well. You said Kanban.
Oh, I say Kanban. Yeah, sorry. I can't wait to play Kanban with Callan so much that I've got Kanban on mine. But yeah, Escape Plan. That is Escape Plan.
All right, so that'll do it for our roundtable on the games that we have been playing this week. One thing we like to do before we get into our feature topic is read a review of the podcast. There are a few things you can do to help the Board Game Barrage podcast. The first is tell a friend, tell the internet, please share. It would be super helpful for us. Another thing that you can do is write a review of the podcast. You can write a review on iTunes. You can write a review on... Where else can you write reviews? Facebook.
So yeah, there's not that many, but Stitcher and Facebook and iTunes are the three main ones.
You can send us emails at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com, but that doesn't tell other people. That just, sort of feeds into my ego, which is probably not good. Anyway, so let us read another review. This review comes to us from Jim Hart 3000.
My favorite Jim Hart.
But I thought you would like the voice that I did, the 3000, like the radio voice. Jim Hart 3000.
That's better. I like that.
Yeah. Great board game podcast. Engaging hosts with a decent diversity of tastes. Always clocks in at under an hour. Discussion topics are interesting. Easy to jump in without too many inside jokes. You just have to know that Mark loves Biblios, probably lives in a gym, and trades games for a living, and the rest should fall into place. Fun podcast. Look forward to seeing it in my playlist every week. Oh, that's a good review.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Oh, that was five out of 5. So that's important.
Yes.
But it was.
But we'll read anything.
We'll read anything. But that was 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jim, for that review. A lot about Mark. So
that's good. More of that.
More of that.
Yeah.
If you want to join the discussion, you can join our Discord channel where we have more than dozens, dozens of dozens. No, how
literally
many is
dozens.
That?
Yeah, dozens of dozens.
Dozens of dozens of people discussing board games. That's boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. We are always there to greet you. I'm sure I've annoyed someone in there, because occasionally people be like, this game is good. And I'll say, LOL, what?
And then leave.
And then I'll just I'll ban them. We've never banned anyone.
Right.
For disagreeing with us. And in fact, that's the fun.
Yeah.
That's the fun of board games. Everyone has a different opinion. If you love Escape Plan, if it has rocked you to the core, it's like Ocean's 11 for you, baby. Get in the Discord. Tell me why I'm wrong. Change my mind.
Perfect.
Now let us move on to our featured topic, which is board gaming fun no matter what?
Let's do it. Yes, it is.
What? You're just going to end? Come on, guys. Okay, so I need to explain this topic because these guys are looking at me quizzically. This is the concept of board games. Because it's a game, I'm having fun no matter what. There are reviewers, there are people in the hobby who say that, well, because I'm playing a game, that's a 6 out of 10 experience. That's a 7 out of 10 experience. So even the worst board game that someone else has designed and made is fun. I'm hanging out with people I like. That is a good experience. Right. So I don't agree with that, but I think you knew that because I brought up the topic. So I wanted to kick it off just asking you guys the question, answer the question, is board gaming fun no matter what?
I will say that my inclination is to say yes, it is. I feel like aside from a game, I was going to say if a game is not broken, but even if a game is broken, if I'm playing with people who I like, I think that can make any experience fun. I would struggle to think of a game that we would play together that would not result in a good time. You know,
Hundreds of horses.
I mean, that is
the 10 out of 10. Yeah, that's
right.
true.
Yeah.
I did see you rate that, Mark, and it was not as high as it should have been, given how formative it is for the podcast.
That's true. I've got to reconsider.
Get in line.
One of the things you said that was interesting to me, because you said, given that you're playing with people you like, right?
Yeah.
But that's part of the consideration, right? Because I think to me that I can easily imagine a scenario and have been in scenarios where I'm playing a game that I don't love with people that aren't necessarily people I know especially well, and it hasn't been a net positive experience.
That's true.
I've definitely come away from a lot of games thinking, I've come away from game nights thinking, oh, I shouldn't have gone. That wasn't a good use of my time. That wasn't a pleasant experience. Just because of the combination of games I've been playing or, just any number of factors. Obviously, my mood could factor into it. But I actually don't think that it's always a given for me. I think there are certainly games, even removing the human element, that I would probably have a bad time playing, maybe regardless of the people.
Really? I see. Okay, you made me reconsider. If I can't pick the people, then yes, I can see games that I would not like to, I wouldn't want to play, that I feel like I would have better use of my time. And I have left game nights and just, whatever, thinking I could have spent the time in better ways. Mm-hmm. But if I select the people, I think every game.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I could definitely pick a group of people that honestly, I would be having fun with whatever we were doing. That's fair. But I definitely think it can be weighted by the specific game that I'm playing to a large extent.
Yeah, I agree.
So, my opinion is that, and some of this goes to my larger ethos on the way in which people score board games, right? Which is that all board games are kind of fun. I think that board games are very similar to movies in that there are ones that are closer to 2 out of 10 than 10 out of 10, and that those experiences are actually the opposite of fun, even with your friends. And akin to movies, like you guys kind of just mentioned, for bad games and bad movies can be fun in a very small context of we're all enjoying it together and mocking it.
Right.
But I don't think that's the usual.
That's not a way to evaluate the...
Yeah. So one of the ways that I think this makes board games and movies similar is that there is a way to enjoy bad movies. Similarly, as there's a way to enjoy bad board games with your friends. Right. But I don't think that experience is the same thing. I think it's the same games to movies, but I don't think that the way in which you enjoy a bad movie or a bad board game is enjoying board games, quote unquote. So let's drive the analogies home. We watched the 1984, maybe, version of Dune by David Lynch. And wow, this comes on the heels of Dune Book Club, Dune the board game. We're all in love with Dune. My God, we're crying. And then we have to watch this film. It was so bad. And it's a product of its time. So if you're an apologist, sorry for you. But we enjoyed this film because it was kind of bad, right? Because we were joking and laughing, and whoever could make the funniest comment about the movie,
T3K style,
kind of won. Yeah. And so, is that the same thing as enjoying the movie?
It's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, but I guess I would argue that at that point the movie is irrelevant, right? Is that what you're saying?
So that's what I'm saying, that there are board games that for a specific individual that even if they're so bad, this entire discussion is coming up as a result of our play of Escape Plan.
Right.
Escape Plan, which is, for me, a very low-rated game. I hope I've caveated enough for the internet to not lynch mob me. I've caveated that it's just not for me.
Yeah.
But this led to a pretty fascinating discussion.
Yeah.
And that discussion was how much...
It was so much a discussion as it was a declaration.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, explain what happened.
Well,
Mark.
we finished the game, and then Kellen declares, I would not play this game. You couldn't pay me $100 to play this game.
Right.
And so I found that...
Well, we immediately jumped in and was like, that's not true.
Yeah.
$100 right now. Let's do this again tomorrow. And you were like, no, I'm quite serious.
Yeah. Which I found
Absurd.
typically hyperbolic for Kellen.
Typically?
Yes.
What does that mean, typically?
Happen
Are you saying
regular basis.
that I bring the hype? I bring the fun to the show?
You bring the hyperbole.
Wow. So we started arriving and messing around with the number here, which is the amount of money that it would cost to get me to play Escape Plan again.
Yes.
And there's a different answer depending on if I'm playing with these two yuck bucks or if I'm playing with strangers. In the event of strangers, the amount is over $100. Right around $100. That's $50 an hour, give or take, right? And if they don't know the rules, no. If these strangers don't know the rules, there is no amount of money. That's you cannot buy my time.
Hard pass.
If they know the rules, if we're in it to win it, $50 an hour, that feels about right for me. Okay. Now with you guys, right? Mark, you actually did. You brought out the cash.
Yeah.
You had it at $10.
Right.
Kellen, come hang out with your friends. Play Escape Plan.
Yeah.
Here's $10.
I will give you $10. Yeah.
And I knew you were serious
Yeah.
because you got your serious eyes on.
Right.
And I said no. My time's more valuable. And thereby proving
Well, let's not say proving because I feel like you quickly lowered that $100 number. I said I will give you $100 to play, and you're like, well, maybe for $100 I would. I think you lowered the number at least to 50.
it was somewhere around 50 that I arrived at. That to play this game again, $25 an hour feels about right. In my opinion, subjecting yourself to board gaming experiences that you just are so far gone from what you enjoy doing is not... I'm looking to hang out with you guys.
Yeah.
And Escape Plan is getting in the way. I'd rather look at a wall and not speak in your presence.
That was funny because I then asked you the same questions. Like, what would it cost for you to like sit and stare at a wall for 2 hours? And you were like, oh, I could use that time to think. And I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, you said $25 or something to stare at a wall. So if anybody wants Callan to stare at a wall, that'll be our
We'll
first
set up
Patreon tier. Yeah,
exactly.
$25 an hour to have Callan stare at a wall.
But I do agree with the sentiment of what you're saying, which is that I do think there are games that even if it was, the three of us playing a game, there are games that would make that maybe not a good use of our time. Even though we would have fun playing it, there are certain games that require you to like not be talking to each other, be sort of staring at your board, doing stuff that wouldn't necessarily be a fun experience and also foster discussion.
That's fair. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, there's obviously I feel like there's always a more optimal game. There's more optimal use.
But that's my point, right? Because like I can think of bad games that we played as a group that were great, like the horse game that we played at BarageCon. The horse race.
I wouldn't play that again.
But that was
Horse
fun.
Fever.
That was Horse Fever was
the
music fun time. I don't know. I thought that was a
horse
great
racing thing.
Fun experience, despite being a terrible.
I agree
game.
with that. Yeah,
but yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily true of every game that the three of us would play together.
So I mean, can I ask you to throw out a game where you feel like that? Because for me, the biggest thing where I would agree with you on would be for a long game. Like I wouldn't want a long game.
I'd be prepared to say like Dominant Species. I would not have fun the three of us playing that again.
Okay.
Well, I would. I'd have fun. Except as long as we put you on a timer.
Yeah, well, that's sure.
I guess for me, I just don't know. I'm trying to think of...
Well, you're feeding into my...
Okay.
You're interrupting.
Sure.
I thought you valued
I
me as a host. And,
no, yes.
Okay. Do you have any games that you will never, in all caps, in case you play again, under any circumstances, i.e. your friend's birthday party, and their dying wish, so they're dying, and it's their birthday party, is to play Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea with you? Are there games that you would never play again, and what are those? Let's talk about them.
No, there aren't. Under those circumstances where a friend of mine even liked it, if a friend of mine...
So they're not dying.
Maybe if they're asking me to play for the fifth time in a couple of days, but there's no... I'm looking at my lowest rated games. Machikoro, Thief's Market, Loopin Louie,
Looping Louie.
Looping Louie is overrated. I'm looking at the camera and I'm saying Looping Louie is overrated.
I've never played it.
If you soup it up, maybe, but Looping Louie vanilla is
you
garbage.
put like a new motor in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. End of the line. See, I mean, if a friend of mine asked to play, because one thing that ties these games together is that they're relatively short. I mean, the longest game here is maybe 45 minutes. So
right. Yeah, it has to be a game that's getting into the 3-4 hour range for me to really be like, that is not a good use of my time.
Right.
Like,
right.
And honestly, again, like if it was framed the way you did with, this is my birthday, I really want us to do this.
And I'm dying.
Yeah. Because honestly, it's something that first game of like Dune, for example, was borderline for me specifically because of the way that the game sort of deteriorated, and it was very, very long. So would relive that experience? With that group of people, maybe. But when you're talking like a 4 or 5 hour long game, it starts to become, well, what are the other things we could do instead? But if the specific request is, let's do this again, then yeah, obviously I would go along with that. If it's someone's intense wish to do. You know what I mean?
I guess, and we can broaden this a little to make it more applicable to broadened game nights.
Sure.
Christina, one thing that she does is she brings her Kindle to game night, because getting 10, 12 people in a room and trying to figure out what everyone's going to play is kind of a tumultuous process,
yeah,
right? Because you have so many different tastes. You have people who want to play a 12-player party game. You have people who want to split off into 3-player only strategy games. And then someone says, I will only play this game.
Yeah.
There's never a time in your mind where you would just say, well, I really don't want to play Augustus, Rise of whatever, bingo the game. I'll sit out, I'll watch, I'll check my email. Is that ever something you would do or consider doing?
I don't think I would personally. Like, I think in that scenario, I would rather just be playing a game than like playing around on my phone or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm with Nealon. Again, if it's like a long game that I don't like, I was looking at the list of games I've rated low, and a couple that are long are Merchants and Marauders and Lewis and Clark. But maybe it's specific to those games. But I just feel like I wouldn't mind playing them again because there's enough people who like those games that I feel like maybe I was missing something, so I'd maybe try to look at it with like fresh eyes.
You try to figure out where the appreciation is coming from.
Exactly. I mean, it wouldn't be something I would ever volunteer as something I'd want to do, but and again, if I'm playing those games with people who don't know the rules or I don't know, that's a much less appealing proposition. But if it was with people who I know and people who I like, then it's still a vehicle for a fun experience.
Wow. Well, you guys are very united in your opinion.
So, I mean, maybe you can talk about where you lie on this.
I think it's clear, like Escape Plan, right? I wouldn't play it with you guys for $50, or it's right around there, maybe 51, but not 49. And actually, just to be clear, when we played Escape Plan, I got a $58 parking ticket immediately following our conversation about how much I would pay to play again.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which I thought was deeply ironic. Thank you, God, for having done that to me. I just think that most of my negative interactions in board gaming have come when you're trying to jam the wrong group of people and the wrong game at the wrong time together, where it's like someone's itching to play Scythe, but it's 11:15 p.m. and there's 5 people left who are up for one more game, and you kind of go, you groan internally, and you're like, well, no, like we should be playing Hundreds of Horses, we should be playing Diamant, we should be playing a party-ish, turn your brain off game, but they're insistent upon Scythe. And that moment, I always regret not either leaving or just saying no.
Yeah.
Those moments where it's not going to go well, and then you do it anyway, is always where my board gaming regret comes in, from a time perspective, from a people perspective. There's even party games where we kind of say, well, this game's really personal and could hurt some feelings. And you think, well, we maybe shouldn't play it with that person. And then we do, and then that person's feelings get hurt.
Right.
So to me, there is a lot more nuance and challenge in jamming together the right group of people with the right game at the right time. And that sometimes the answer should be just no. Because board gaming is always fun. I do agree. I'm not a curmudgeon about everything, but it's just when you jam someone who has a very specific set of expectations up against someone else who has a different set of expectations, that's just where things go haywire.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, I would just say there'd be nothing wrong with just saying, no, I'm done. I mean, if somebody wants to play Dominant Species at 11:15 and you just know it's not the right vibe, then you just beg off. But I'm curious, are there any short games or party games, something like filler games, where you would refuse if somebody asked? Like a 30-minute or less game. I'm sure there are, but if somebody not even dying, like just a strong wish.
Yeah, I have a great example. At our weekly game night, we play occasionally One Night Ultimate Werewolf. But the way in which we like to play it is there's expansions involved and no villagers. So we play the throw everything in the pile and mix it all up. And I have zero fun or almost no fun in those contexts. I find the game breaks under its own weight and becomes dumb in a way that I just get annoyed about, and I'd rather watch other people, and I actually might have more enjoyment watching other people
that makes sense.
Suss out who they are, whereas I do love One Night Ultimate Werewolf under the right context, and I just sort of groan or don't want. There are medium weight Euro games like Istanbul, where if Christina is playing my girlfriend who is a little less into heavier games and someone's like, well, this is the first time, I'm just going to throw in all the expansions. I just know that I'm thinking of this like square hole, square peg, and you're starting to change the equation in a way that is just going to tip the scale in a bad way. Even the night that we played Dune, we couldn't start it, I think, until like 9 p.m., 8:30 p.m., and I was this close to calling it off. Even though I had been preparing for it for months and reading hours of rule books to get us right there, I was this close to saying, I'm trying, my brother's in town, I'm trying to like just jam it all together. And we pulled it off and it went great, but it almost didn't. And, near the end,
there was
like
a fatigue factor.
There was a fatigue factor that set in where we're all just like, wow, we can't continue to do this. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. But my counter to that, putting myself in your situation in those cases, because I'm with you on both respects. One, not enjoying one night in the way that you're describing it, and in the second point, if I was with somebody who I knew didn't like heavy games, having all these expansions juice. But I feel like in both circumstances, I might try to convince people that let's play it this other way, especially in the second circumstance where you're playing with somebody who doesn't want all these things mixed up. So you could just say like, hey, can we just play it vanilla? Like if the person there is not responsive to especially that specific suggestion, then I feel like that's like not somebody you want to game with.
Yeah, I think that different game groups have different conventions, and this is something that we'll probably save for a future topic, but we had sort of in reserve here about how you adapt and become a part of that, because sometimes you don't feel like you have the voice to say, hey, no, let's play something, that everybody wants to play, or
let's play it this way, let's play it.
Correct. Like, well, no, that's how we play it here.
Right.
Is a common answer at many board game games.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, let us end, as we sometimes like to do, with a hot question.
Me? A hot question.
Every time. If you want to hire him, anyone, please do. Okay, here we go. Would you rather, it's a good hot question when it's would you rather. Would you rather play your favorite game?
What might that be?
Don't say it. With a group of complete strangers. People you don't know that could hurt you. Well, I don't know about that. Or a game that you actively dislike or extremely dislike with your best friend, a.k.a. Callan Allen.
Well, the question's invalid just on the end point. No, that's easy for me. I would play any game with you or with the people I love over my favorite game with strangers, like easily for me. Not even a question.
Yeah. So you would forego the resistance.
Yeah. I wouldn't play the resistance with. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would any game in my top 3. I would forego the resistance, Gloomhaven, Sulkin with people. Let's say random people, right? That I don't know, or even people that like I don't know as well. I would play any game that the 3 of you want.
I 100% agree. I would rather play my bottom 10 games with the people I like than my top 10 games with randos.
But what if one of those strangers became your lover? You never know if you don't.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. It's funny because as the one who constantly says that board games are just a social construct, I'm not sure how I would answer this question, and that's why I was a little bit more conflicted. Sounds like this wasn't as hot of a question as it could have been. Because for me, the idea of playing Escape Plan again, or a game like Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, or these long, arduous things with you guys, we'd have some lulls, but like I don't know the time wasting factor of it. I'd rather sit around in a room and just chit chat about nothing, which we also
But
do.
you can do that already. Like, why not just do that?
Well, but it's just getting in the way. It's
not
just
getting in the
annoying
way.
me.
You could
It
just,
doesn't have to.
yeah.
And I could be playing innovation with the complete stranger, and then I convert them
Right.
to
And then you converted the complete stranger to innovation, and that feels good. Then.
I mean better
Better
than
than-
you guys, probably.
I just don't see the games as that big of an obstruction. It's like a puzzle sitting in the middle of the room. You just talk around it if you're having a terrible time, or you make fun of it. You take the bad movie approach.
I think you guys just like people more than I do.
That's true. That's certainly the case, I think.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a fact?
I think so. Yeah. You're anti-man,
What?
as in humanity.
I thought I was the man of the people.
I think that's a self-given title.
All right, so do you guys have any closing statements, closing arguments for is board gaming fun no matter what?
I think there is weirdly a lot of sort of like mental arithmetic that goes into like me answering that question. And it's a combination of my mood, the people, the board game, the time of day, how long the game is. Like I said, even though I just said I would happily play any game with you, if the proposal was we're playing Dominant Species, it would be like this moment of like, do I really want to do that? But so there's a lot that goes into that, right? I don't think as a baseline that I would happily just jump into any game and expect to have a minimum level of fun. But yeah, I think it's interesting like how many little considerations like factor into that. But overall, I would say that the people you're playing with will always sort of trump the game itself for me.
I will say that you never have to pay me anything to play with you guys. See? Look at that. I have a heart of gold.
My cheeks are flushing. That's it.
That's it.
You don't want. You have no more work.
You need to pay me $30 to stare at a wall. You don't need to pay me $50 to play a game with you. I am here of my own volition.
Well, no matter what, how you choose to spend your time is your decision alone. Don't let Mark convince you otherwise. Board gaming is not fun no matter what. You heard it here first.
There you go.
On the
Can we
board
change that to our new tagline?
Slogan, yeah.
It's not always. You always want to change the slogan. The slogan's good.
Board Game Barrage.
People-
Games aren't always that
Always
great.
fun,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. You can find our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. You can find our guild at boardgamebarrage.com/guild. If you want to talk to us, I guarantee you can find us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you do want to talk to us. I'm sure some of us more than others.
Check Kellen's rate before you sign up to talk to him, though, because he may have an hourly plan that exceeds your budget.
I might have a rate. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
To talk to strangers. It's pretty high at some point.
At least $50.
Thank you so much to Heart Society Music for letting us use their fantastic song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. You can find them at heartsocietymusic.com. Thanks again for joining us. So long.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Boom.
Boom.
Yep, that is Zendo from the Looney Labs.
Are you gonna...
Do you want me to pass it to you?
Yeah, you're the host.
I mean, you've never shown this much respect for me, host or not host.
No, it's not anything about respect. I want you to give, set me up.
Oh, tee it up.
Yeah,
So that you can win. All right, Mark. Everyone's been talking about it.
Yep.
We've been playing it. Why don't you talk to us about Mr. Lacerda's latest game?
Escape plan.
Dun, dun, dun. And blah, 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 blah.
But
Yep.
What?
That's
What?
staying in.
That. What? Neelan, you have no edit power
Yeah,
here.
sorry.
So
No power here, sorry.